On a cool, dark January morning, not 3 days into the Alaskan snow crab season, this boat is in serious trouble. The Rosie G is taking on water. With its heavy load of crab pots on the deck, it is listing badly. This vessel, with her crew of 5, is sinking. The crew was fortunate. Hauled in from the freezing waters by a nearby vessel, they escaped almost certain death. But many are not this lucky. The seafloor and shoreline are littered with the rusting hulls of 100 fishing boats and with the bones of 1,000 fishermen. Crab fishing on the Bering Sea is extremely dangerous. From year to year, the grim toll rarely changes. One fisherman will die almost every week during the 2-month season. This is considered by many to be the deadliest job in the world. The adventure begins in a small town in the middle of the Aleutians. A string of bleak volcanic islands that stretch over 1,000 miles into the Bering Sea. This is the busiest commercial fishing port in the United States, Dutch Harbor. The town was founded by Russian seal traders in 1768. Their Orthodox church still stands as a beacon for souls lost at sea. In the 1940s and 50s, a market developed for the giant Alaskan king crab, and Dutch Harbor became a center of the crab fishing industry. The world's appetite for king crab soon outstripped the supply, and the smaller Opilio crab, commonly called snow crab, filled the void. Today, most of Dutch Harbor's 4,000 inhabitants work in the shipyards or processing plants. But the town is also a magnet for adventurers who come from around the globe to risk their lives for a piece of the billion-dollar payoff.
And the money is a good payday, you know? There ain't nothing like it. It's a gamble. You gotta admit it's a gamble, but I like taking this gamble. It's one I choose to accept. I work half the year. I make more than most people make in a couple of years in half the year.
But for some, the costs outweigh the rewards.
This year, cracked 2 ribs. Don't know the extent of the damage to my knee yet. My boat blew up. I burned my hair off. I got my hand tore off halfway. All my skin was off my knuckles. Bear claw, lion claw, and my claw. Other than that, it's been a great year.
This is a different breed of men who make a pact with and accept the consequences of a cruel sea. Crab fishing is a gamble from start to finish, and the betting begins at a warehouse in Dutch Harbor.
This will be a closed meeting for members only.
Captains of all the fishing boats are locked in negotiations with the processing plants over this year's price of crab. Yesterday, processors made a bid of 84 cents a pound. It was rejected. Although the season opened yesterday, not one of the 250 crab boats will go out until a price is settled. Rick Mezich is captain and owner of the Fierce Allegiance.
Hopefully, get a better price of 85 or 86, 87, and, wait and see if we can get it.
A few pennies can make a big difference when the quota is set at 186 million pounds of crab. An offer has just been phoned in. 90 cents a pound. The skippers almost unanimously accept. The crab fishermen's gamble paid off. They got a $12 million raise. At 187 feet, the Fierce Allegiance is one of the largest boats in the fleet. In the days leading up to the season, Rick Mezich and his crew have worked around the clock to prepare the boat. Tony LaRussa has been the deck boss of the Fierce Allegiance for many years. He knows all too well the dangers that lie ahead.
The weather could change on us. It's out here, it changes every second. 1 hour it could be flat calm, the next hour it can be blowing 40, 60, even 80 miles an hour. You work 30-foot seas that could be hitting you broadside, and with 250 pots on board, or even 200 for the smaller boats that are out there. It's a very dangerous situation that you get into. Because on the way out, we could be hitting weather, we could be hitting ice, and this whole stack could be a complete ice cube by the time we get out there.
Ice collects on the mountain of pots on the deck. A top-heavy boat can easily flip and sink. The chief engineer, Eric Whitaker, is responsible for keeping the powerful diesel engines running at all times. Also on board the vessel are 3 fishermen who have braved this treacherous season before. Danny Soria, his brother Johnny Soria, and Tim Probst have paid their dues. They are the full share guys. Signing on for this trip are 2 first-timers, commonly called greenhorns. Joe Johnson is only 19 years old.
My favorite part about fishing is probably the work, man. It's about getting the money. Yep, that's about it.
Nathan Ellington is 21.
My job basically is just to do whatever I'm told and try to do it as fast as possible.
This is the crew of the Fierce Allegiance. Together, they will tempt fate for a share of the riches.
I've been crab fishing for 10 years. And those 10 years, I've probably heard 14 maydays and know of 5 friends that have gone down and died in the Bering Sea.
Saving lives is the job of the Coast Guard cutter Morgenthau. When you're hundreds of miles at sea with a crushed skull, a Coast Guard helicopter is your only hope to reach a hospital in time. In the coming weeks, Petty Officer Todd McKenna and his crew will see plenty of action.
We're basically here to respond to any emergency that might arise. Generally, during crab openers, there's a lot of medevacs, smashed hands, closed head injuries, concussions, pinched limbs.
Also on board the Fierce Allegiance is Lance Nylander, owner of Seattle's Dungeness Crab Works. He plans to test some new inventions under the harsh conditions of real crabbing.
My job is to build the best aquatic traps in the world. The way I see it, that is my goal.
At first light, the Fierce Allegiance sets course for the fishing grounds. 180 miles northwest in the middle of the Bering Sea. Their goal will be to fill the storage tanks as quickly as possible, haul the catch back to Dutch Harbor, restock, and rush out again.
Tim! Go for that hook!
The men will work day and night, rotating shifts of 18 hours on and 6 hours off. The bitterly cold and relatively shallow waters of the Bering Sea contain the most productive and most dangerous fishing grounds anywhere on Earth. With bad weather on the way, the crew of the Fierce Allegiance will earn their keep. Crab season starts in mid-January and lasts about 8 weeks. In calm weather, the Fierce Allegiance might be able to fill its 300,000-pound storage tanks in less than a week. The crew's goals are simple: 4 trips, 1 million pounds of crab, and no serious injuries.
Full share is 4% on the vessel. The 2 greenhorns are on the vessel right now. Start at 1%, and I promise another half for them if they do a good job and work out.
A full share crew member could earn up to $50,000 for just 2 months' work. That's the lure that draws them to risk almost everything.
Right off that ball feet at time. I didn't hear that.
The greenhorns are introduced to the grinder, a nasty, growling machine that chops up blocks of frozen herring for bait. Over the next 8 weeks, these young men will spend hundreds of hours feeding this machine, churning out a constant flow of chum for the crab pots.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 15.
A machine that grinds bait can also grind fingers.
Nathan, never open that up with this running and stick your hand in there. You never need to open that up. Just stop, and then you can open it up, stick your hand, and that's open that up, put your hand in there with the thing running. Or put it down inside there. Never go past this with your hand, never open that cover up when it's running. All it does is catch one corner of your glove, suck your hand in, and you won't have one.
The Fierce Allegiance carries no full-time cook. The crew takes turns making meals.
You know, they don't get in 30 minutes unless it's free.
But sometimes eating is low on the priority list.
Still getting seasick? A little. Just not too much. Just sometimes it'll just come on me really quick and then leaves. I don't know what to do about it. Do you spend much time on boats? Yeah, I do actually. Just never in boats this big, you know. The boat rolls so slow, it just makes my stomach turn inside out.
As the crew heads in for a quick meal and shift change, Nathan, too seasick to eat, sits it out on the cold deck. A few test pots have been launched and pulled back.
This is an Opie stick, 4 inches. You can always measure an Opie from the widest part, from back to back. The stick touches, it's legal. That'd be legal. This is a non-legal crab, as you can see. Nothing under this stick. Illegal. All right?
The small crabs are thrown back into the ocean.
.136 has the plastic tunnels of lances.
Below deck, Lance Nylander prepares his latest inventions.
And a bait sack with feathers off it, I guess you could call them. Pot lures, flasher, and it'll run for 30 hours. Some hoochies, glow hoochies.
Lance affectionately calls one of his brainchildren the disco light.
Yeah, we'll just drop it in the pot just to see if it'll help attract the fish. I don't know if this will handle the depth, but hopefully if it fills up with water and it's still running, it'll just quit flashing. We're good on a Christmas tree. But hey, you never know. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So we'll give it a shot and see what happens.
With temperatures dropping into the teens and snow falling, Tony gives his final lecture on how to survive the job.
Okay, first things first. Safety's #1, you guys. Nobody gets hurt. If everybody comes home without an injury, we've had a good season. We make money, we had a great season. We had fun, we had a dream season. Whenever you hear that beeper whatsoever, I want you to look physically at your feet. Make sure there's no line wrapped around your feet. From the bottom of the pot.
A beeper signals for the launch of a pot. As the pot plunges to sea bottom, 600 feet of rope will uncoil on deck. One misstep, and there could be a rope around your ankle.
If there is, holler. Don't lift your feet. That's the worst thing to do, is to lift your feet. Just make sure you always know where you're at, where your hands are at, where everybody's at. Be safe. That's all there is to it. Nobody gets hurt this season.
Several years ago, Danny Soria learned this lesson the hard way.
It was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. Must have been about 20, 25-foot seas and blowing about 30, 35. And I was throwing the hook, you know. And then the other guy, just in all the commotion, he had thrown it in the block, and I didn't realize it was wrapped around me. Somehow the block got turned on, so that thing just snapped and just launched me 20 feet in the air. started to panic a little bit at first. I gasped for air. I couldn't catch my breath, and the waves were just breaking on my face. My rain gear started filling with water, and sweats started getting saturated, and I could just feel my boots filling with water, just being pulled down. And I thought to myself, God, what am I going to do now, I look out of the corner of my eye, and I just see that first bag, and it just felt like God just answered the question. Almost like he was putting his hand out there, just saying, all you got to do is just swim and grab my hand. So I just gave it every last bit of energy I had. So once I made it to the big one, it's like having something to hold on to, Now it's pretty comforting, because I don't really think I would have made it if it wouldn't have been for that little orange bag. I saw the lights of the boat start turning around and coming back, so it's just a big sigh of relief. It was like, everything's gonna be all right. All I gotta do is hold on to this bag. I remember seeing Tony on the deck there. There he was, just sitting there. He had that hook in his hand, and he just gave me that look. He just made eye contact with me. When he had that, like, I'm not gonna let you down. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. I to this day, I owe both Rick and Tony, pretty much my life. Because they did come back and get it. So, I owe them a lot.
Danny was lucky. He could have easily died in the freezing 30-degree water.
It's good for human consumption.
In addition to lures, Lance has spent years trying to concoct an artificial time-release bait.
This is Lance's experimental pop. Will be 406. 406.
Canterhooks, trigger.
First experimental.
Roger, this is the first experimental.
What's Lance's nickname? Einstein. He's Einstein. Why do you call him Einstein? Because he does all the studies and all the plots on how to catch a crab a lot quicker. Any of them work? Let's just say that more of them haven't, but some of them do. There's a couple. They're all good ideas. Ready to go.
As the sun sets, the crew begins to launch the first string of pots.
We're going to throw 250 pots out, varying from anywhere from 30 pots to 40 pots of string, and we'll keep sitting until they're gone. Until we have a clean deck, and then we'll turn around and start picking them up.
The pot launching will continue throughout the night. Tony assigns the greenhorns specific tasks. They get the idea, but executing will prove hard and sometimes scary.
Watch your feet, Joe. After you hook that up, go for that other hook.
Let's go, Nathan. You gotta go fast.
Let's get this pot up ready a lot faster than that.
Yeah, Roger!
As fast as they can prepare them, the men launch the pots in freezing weather. The greenhorns grow cold and tired. It gets harder to stay alert to every detail. The work is very physical and extremely dangerous. In any instant, a fisherman could get hit by a swinging pot or snap a finger handling one, or fall on the slick deck. Along the continental shelf, the seafloor suddenly rises from 2 miles to 600 feet. Deep ocean waters swirl up, depositing a rich layer of nutrients on the shallow ledge. Here on the cold edge of the abyss, the world's largest schools of crab gather to feast. They are attracted to the pots by oils released from the bait jugs filled with chopped herring. After the grueling deck work, galley chores are almost a relief.
Days like this is not too fun.
Hey, Eric, is this where all great fishing start right here? Like this?
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Luckily, I'm not going to make a profession out of fishing.
Oh, boy. As soon as you get your paycheck, it's all over. Your hook, line, and sinker. What do you think I said 3 years ago? Oh, I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna make a little quick money. That's all I do now is fish. You're in, buddy.
Yeah, but
as soon as you get home, you'll be home a month. You'll forget all about how bad it was.
no,
I'm telling you.
I already skipped a couple of seasons.
Don't lie to me. I know. It's okay, you don't have to lie.
Yeah, I'm throwing this in the,
Just because you got caught in the trap doesn't mean I'm not.
Trap? Yeah, that's a profession, man.
The trap of being out at sea.
What are you gonna be, a florist?
Flower arrangers are pretty good. Less stressful.
It's a noble profession, I'll give you that. But I'm telling you, you're trapped. You're a fisherman now. Just accept it and get on with life. 4 miles.
24 hours is winter coming up. Not only do you have to watch what you do, but you have to watch the others. When the signal one long horn means clear the deck no matter where you're at. Buzzer.
It's every man for himself.
When that comes on, it doesn't go off. That means you drop whatever you're doing, you get under shelter. I don't care what you're at or what you got a hold of. You just run. You get under the shelter.
With bad weather on the way, the greenhorns will hear the alarm much sooner than they could ever imagine. Since ages past, this verse has been a part of the seafarer's lore. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morning, sailors take warning.
Yeah, beautiful red sky, as you can see. High winds up in the atmosphere there with streaky clouds. Storm warnings are going to be coming in here this afternoon. We've got high atmosphere winds. Barometer's dropping. We're in for a ride tonight.
Storm warnings is a technical term weather forecasters use to predict ferocious conditions, winds of 55 to 65 miles per hour that create high, powerful waves. Despite these storm warnings, the crew keeps working. The size of the Fierce Allegiance provides some protection against the storm, but only up to a point. To retrieve the crab pots, the hook man tosses a heavy, 4-pronged hook attached to 75 feet of line. This hook must catch one of the buoy lines tied to the pot. If it misses, the boat will have to circle back, losing valuable time. After sitting on the bottom for 20 hours, the first pot of the season is winched up. The numbers are excellent.
Oh, yeah. First pot looks pretty good. So, things are looking good. Keeps up this kind of average, everybody's going to be smiling in about 52 hours.
But the storm is moving in, and soon a smile will be the last thing you will find anywhere on the Fierce Allegiance.
Come on, you guys. We got to use our heads, man. We're going to get so far behind.
shit shield. How effective is that? I'm not going to be out here for 12 hours a day.
The Opilio crab are dropped into one of 6 live holding tanks. Together, the tanks carry up to 300,000 pounds of crab. Fresh seawater is circulated to keep the crab alive until a fierce allegiance returns to port. The greenhorns aboard the Fierce Allegiance are quickly learning the craft of crab fishing. Sometimes the hard way.
Hit by the buoy. He threw it and I was running past and it pegged me in the face. You still got blood on your nose, dude.
Then what'd you do?
Nothing.
Kept running?
Kept running.
The hard work is starting to take its toll.
What's that on your wrist?
Oh, that's a brace. You wake up during the night with your arms all numb. Your hands will hurt. You just gotta, it's all you can do just to get them moving.
You wake up in the morning with a fist. Some people call it a claw, because you can't open your hands until you start using them a little bit more and more.
The Coast Guard has received a report of a man overboard from the fishing vessel West Point. Keep a sharp lookout for signs of distress. Assist if possible, and notify the nearest Coast Guard station.
Early the next morning, Rick picks up a call of a man overboard from the Coast Guard.
Yeah, there's a rescue helicopter, a Coast Guard helicopter flying around now looking for a man that got washed overboard this morning in heavy seas. And we have a cutter right now off our starboard side looking for the body.
The search for the man overboard goes on into the night.
And hopefully they'll find the body, but there's a good 99% chance they won't find the body.
It's just on the radio, somebody got washed overboard. They haven't found them, they're still searching.
He'll stay afloat as long as he can tread the water until he, goes numb and then, starts to sink, and then he'll go down and stay down.
The body was never found. The crew now start to pull up some of the pots containing Lance's experiments. The pot with the disco lights comes up first. It's DOA, dead on arrival.
Yeah, that baby worked good, didn't it? Kind of thought it was leaking.
Later that evening, the men haul in better news. The pot with Lance's time release bait.
I like it. I'm real pleased with the performance. There's a lot of the bait that's still left, which means I can just leave it in the pot and keep using it. No sign of sand fleas.
Sand fleas aren't actual fleas, but rather tiny aquatic creatures that can devour the bait from an entire jug before the crabs arrive. With the temperatures falling rapidly, the crew prepares for bad weather.
No, really, I just do this for the fun. The money's just a side benefit. I really enjoy the abuse.
What sort of abuse is that?
Pain. Constant pain.
What's the idea of the tape around the boots?
Oh, so the waves don't make it up your pant leg. Fill your boots up with water. Which will happen if you don't tape them up. That's a guaranteed fact. There's nothing like working 18 hours a day with wet boots.
Working on deck is a very physical job. It can be very cold and wet. You get a 40 or 50 knot winds out of the north or northeast. The chill factor starts going down. We'll start making ice. Temperatures below zero. They're 18 hours on the deck, but they get paid well for it, and they work hard for it.
The Fierce Allegiance tanks pumps and powerful engines are monitored closely by the chief engineer.
Change out a valve on the wraparound ballast tank. Probably an obstruction in there. We'll take it apart, free the valve so you don't get any leak into the ballast tank.
Before fuel goes to the engine, it must be carefully filtered to prevent contamination by seawater. If the vessel were to lose power, it would quickly be at the mercy of the waves. And the sea can be a harsh mistress. As she was a few years ago to the crab fishing vessel, the Alaskan Monarch, and Captain Morris Hansen.
The day of the incident, we had been trying to get into St. Paul to deliver our product. We had a load of crab aboard, and we'd been fishing for several days, dodging around the ice. There was about a 2-mile band of ice in front of the processor, but I didn't give us much thought because it was loose, and we'd been in and out of the ice quite a few days.
Navigating through ice fields carries hidden dangers. An iceberg sheared off the Alaskan Monarch's rudder, leaving her unable to steer. Giant swells turned the boat broadside and tossed it slowly, inexorably, towards the shore. As it crept closer to the rocky coast, the Monarch sent out a mayday.
We're not grounded yet. This is the chief engineer. We have not grounded yet, but we are real close. Asking Monarch, Storrs, Roger, get somebody out after your pilot house here. We're going to shoot you a line here. This is the engineer. Ram, stand by.
The Coast Guard cutter Storrs tried to fire a tow line to the stricken vessel. All attempts fail. The boat drifts towards certain doom.
Roger, helicopter be here in about 5 minutes.
It becomes the helicopter's job to lift the crew off the boat. At first, the rescue goes smoothly. The Coast Guard helicopter hoists one crew member after another off the bow of the boat. With the crew safe and all possibility of saving the ship gone, the captain and chief engineer head for the bow. The helicopter pilot's job now gets much more difficult and dangerous. The basket has to get close enough for the men to grab it. But the waves keep pulling them away. The maneuver must be performed before the men lose consciousness or strength, before they freeze or get pulled under, or are crushed between boulders and car-sized blocks of ice. First, the chief engineer. And then, Captain Hansen. Captain Hansen suffers severe chest injuries, but he will recover.
When I lost the boat, it was a great loss, especially watching it grind to its death. It's not easy to take.
In the next few hours, the Fierce Allegiance will face the full force of the worst storm to hit the Bering Sea in 18 years. The bitter Arctic storm has suddenly engulfed the Fierce Allegiance. Smaller, more vulnerable boats are heading home or seeking shelter in the Pribilof Islands, north of the fishing grounds. The storm has also grounded the Coast Guard helicopters. Because of the size of the boat, Rick Message and his crew can continue to work, but now they are completely on their own. If they get into an emergency, there will be no one nearby to respond.
Wait till the table goes back, all right? It ain't worth it. It really isn't worth it.
Tony the deck boss becomes a bear in this weather.
What's going on here? You're freaking around over here.
In the storm, Tony doesn't allow the men to slack off. Under these conditions, a mistake could be fatal. The winds are tracking at 80 miles an hour, and the waves are cresting at 38 feet. The sea is in full fury, and the storm is getting worse. Real fear creeps into the minds of the men.
Come back there, watch your starboard side there, Money Mike.
Rogue waves slap the deck.
This is just nasty out here. Just prone to injury out here.
Once waves begin to surge across the deck, even large boats no longer provide protection. If you are swept overboard, your life will hang between you, the water, the skill of your shipmates, and luck. Until the storm lets up, crab fishing in the Bering Sea will be pure hell.
3 more pots back there. Go up. Hey! Get here! Get over here! Get over here! Everybody's off deck. Everybody's gone. Hello, swimming on the deck.
By nightfall, the storm has grown so violent that even the men of the Fierce Allegiance must abandon their work.
When you're done with that, bring that back, would you? So, it's the last one on the boat. Yeah, they're stocking these things. Make people keep for sentimental reasons.
Nothing sentimental about an injury.
During the break from work, the crew sits down for its first real meal in a week. For now, the sea rules the deck.
Had my back to it, didn't even see it coming, hit me from behind, washed me into the launcher. Ice climbing. That kind of got me wet.
So your breakfast for Advil?
Yeah, for Advil and some coffee. For starters. I'll probably take a couple more of these in a while.
Where? Yeah. Just eat the sheets. Okay. On spot, Jim. Is this yours? Yeah.
By the next morning, the storm has let up just enough for the men to go back to work. It's a simple proposition. Time is money. Tony pushes the men to make up for lost time, but the crew seems to have lost its rhythm. The crew struggles against gusting winds and high seas, while productivity continues to fall.
72 pots, though, we got in. We worked hard at it, that's for sure. They battled steady 20, 25-foot seas.
These may be the most dangerous times of all. The storm surges erratically, and fatigue muddles the mind. The hookman's toss has failed. Tony makes a last-second effort to snag the buoy before the boat passes. Whenever they fail to hook the line, they lose valuable time circling back. To make matters worse, the storm has badly reduced the catch.
And it was only 99 in the last one, Rick. 99. See, if you can't wait, man, throw it, man. The sooner you throw it, the faster we'll get it in. If you miss, the guys in the back, I'll be on the back. You can't control this boat in weather like this, so you gotta just take as many shots as you possibly can. If you keep turning around, man, it's just gonna end up costing us a whole day of fishing.
After 11 hard, sleepless, brutal days, the men of the Fierce Allegiance have had enough. The holes are filled with crab, and supplies are running low. It's time for the Fierce Allegiance to return to port.
Hey, grab the rest of the bait jugs out of the freezer. Right? There's no more. Okay, use up all that bait that's in the bait bin and put it into sacks. Put it in sacks and get it ready.
Going back, all right.
Exhaustion has taken its toll, and the bone-weary crew catches up on lost sleep. As for Lance Nylander and his experiments, some worked, and some didn't. Once they dock in Dutch Harbor, the crew will have little time for R&R. The boat will stay in port only long enough to unload and restock with bait and supplies. The first catch of the Fierce Allegiance turns out to weigh 270,000 pounds. At 90 cents a pound, that means almost $250,000. The live crabs go directly from the boat to a processing plant. There, they are sent through a hopper, then eviscerated into two sections. The gills, which are inedible cartilage, are ground off the crab cluster. Then the crab is sorted according to size, boiled in hot water, chilled in a series of cooling tanks, and frozen. The frozen processed crab is boxed and ready for shipment all over the world. Just 24 hours after docking, the fierce Allegiance heads back to sea, pushing for as many runs as it can in the 8-week season. By the end of the season, it will surpass the million-pound goal by 100,000 pounds and earn just shy of $1 million. And despite the worst weather in 18 years, the entire crew will make it through the season bruised, battered, but unbeaten. Even with all the modern technology, crab fishing still fits in the ancient mold of men against the sea. The crew will heal and share their stories with men from other boats. Stories of storm blasts, towering waves, and near-fatal spills. And the greenhorns will begin to amass the stories of their own lives at sea. All fishermen have tales to share for as long as they stay with the job, or as long as they survive. The Coast Guard will attest to the season's tragic toll. It will assist 26 vessels, radio medical advice 9 times, evacuate 16 crew members, and search for 2 men overboard whose bodies were never found. The season's greatest tragedy will strike in its last week. A boat called the Lin J will sink and take the lives of all 5 crew members. Overall, the fatalities will confirm once again why crab fishing in winter in the Bering Sea is considered the deadliest job in the world.